strong of a resume, but still certainly has had some successes on our Star City game circuit.
And as far as we know, this is still game one, and knowing these kinds of decks, it's very likely that this is still game one, especially with that sort of board state. So confirmed this is still game one. So William Jensen with Aetherling and a couple of soldiers alongside a, looks like a Jace that was in play but is currently under the edge of a detention sphere.
Zachary Johnson and Robbie Hayes, we please report to the side event stage. Your modern tournament is ready to begin. Zachary Johnson and Robbie Hayes.
And it looks like Joe Losset is going to... Looks like he just exiled his Aetherling and it came back. So Joe draws an Azorius Charm for the turn. He's got a Far Away in hand, among other things. He looks like he's going to go ahead and swing in with his Aetherling, unblockable. He's pumping it up to 6, 7, 8, and I imagine we're going to see, okay, Azorius Charm from Jensen on the Aetherling is going to fog it for the turn while Joe exiles it and then passes the turn. So Aetherling comes back. We're going to see this weird Aetherling dance where they're each trying to fog each other's Aetherling.
It's very, very frustrating when you're facing off against an Aetherling, just because the damage is so relentless and the answers are so few that in essence you're kind of creating almost a disrupting scepter effect. Discard a card, discard a card, discard a card, but it has to be a good card or else.
So you see Huey does the same thing, attacks with his Aetherling, pumps it up. Joe has the Azorius Charm this time, and William exiles his Aetherling. So identical attacks and responses from both players. Joe untaps, draws Thoughtseize, has Supreme Verdict in hand alongside a Far Away and what looks like a Sphinx's Revelation. Jensen's hand looks to be at least double Blood Baron, at least a single Blood Baron. I thought it may be double. He's got Divination, he's got Blood Baron, he's got another Azorius Charm to hold back that Aetherling for a turn. Joe's going to show us exactly what William has in hand. We're going to see Supreme Verdict, we're going to see Divination. All right, Joe's going to hide them from us for the moment, but we'll see if we can't get those on screen for you. Thoughtseize is sort of a great reason, not sort of, it is a great reason to play Esper as opposed to Blue-White, which actually won the last Standard Open. Having access to Thoughtseize is pretty important, plus all that targeted removal. So now we can see his hand. Blood Baron, Azorius Charm, Hero's Downfall, Jace Architect of Thought, Divination, and Supreme Verdict are the choices for Joe. Now that he knows kind of what Jensen's got to work with, he's going to try to likely find a way to get his Aetherling through, but there are two spells in Jensen's hand already. He's going to go ahead and take the Azorius Charm. So it's going to cost William either a Hero's Downfall or a chunk of life this turn.
These two players are, neither of them are strangers to the control matchup. So this is kind of an interesting dance between experienced players. And if you compare this to the last game, this is deep in the middle of game one. And in the other match, that was just done.
Right.
Quick 2-0 victory. These players still in game one. And, Joe taking his time to make some decisions, but these are hard decisions.
Yes.
And I don't see that he is going and taking any inordinate amount of time.
Yeah, it looks like post Thoughtseize, he's going to go ahead and make the Aetherling unblockable. Does not pump it, connects for 4. And Jensen says, all right, I can take 4. I'm at 19. I'll take the hit this time. Jensen should fall to 15 here. Joe with a follow-up play. Looks like he's going with a Revelation for 4 is the call. Now that he knows Jensen has no counter spells, he's going to go ahead and try to refill his hand. He's going to try to find another Azorius Charm for himself to deal with Jensen's Aetherling. Azorius Charm or Doomblade or Ultimate Price. Any of those would work. Revelation resolves, and Joe left with 2 untapped lands. all 3 colors available to him. He did not blink his Aetherling yet. He plays a Godless Shrine. He may not need to blink the Aetherling if he's not planning on blocking with it. He had it available the last few turns because he blinked it in response to removal. So he does not blink his Aetherling away. It remains in play and tapped. Now Jensen untaps. He's got Aetherling and 2 soldiers. I imagine he's going to connect for a couple here with these soldiers. If not with the Aetherling itself. A Detention Sphere drawn for Jensen. It looks like he's considering a Divination, but maybe thinking better of it. As you mentioned, a lot of decisions here. Now Jensen in the tank. He's going to go ahead and swing first. He says, all right, I don't need to make anything unblockable. I'm just going to go ahead and swing in with a 4-5 and 2 1-1s. Now I'm going to pump my Aetherling 4 times, so it's an 8-1. And Joe's going to have to take it all. He's going to fall to 5 here. Apparently unable to find any 2-mana answers to the Aetherling off of that Sphinx's Revelation last turn. Jensen's going to inspect Joe's graveyard. And Joe's going to take a look at it as well.
Jensen has so many weapons left in his hand. We saw him with Blood Baron. We saw him with Jace. Divination, he goes just for a quick little burst of cards. Find him a land and a hero's downfall. Joe almost dead here. Needs to find something. And Sphinx's Revelation, as good as it is, it really has trouble keeping up with an Aetherling.
All right, so Joe draws for the turn. It's an Elspeth off the top. Not quite going to do it. He needs an answer to Aetherling. He needs an instant speed answer to Aetherling, or he needs Jensen to somehow tap out, which I doubt is very likely.
Now, does he have a far away there? Because he can at least use the bouncing ability of far away to buy a turn.
Sure, that's true. He can use that. You're right. So he's going to go ahead and swing with his Aetherling in for 8. Jensen going to fall to 7 here.
You see the Detention Sphere moved to the front of Joe's hand. Also in his hand, Elspeth, Sun's Champion.
Yeah, that was his draw for
far
the turn.
Away.
Looks like he may have a Hero's Downfall as well. He only had 2 mana up last turn when Huey attacked with his Aetherling, so Hero's Downfall wouldn't have done it, and I guess Joe decides he's going to go ahead and pass the turn here. That's all he wants to do. But yeah, if he's got Hero's Downfall, that's another instant speed answer to hold back Jensen's Aetherling for the turn.
William Jensen draws a Dissolve. That was actually very big.
Yeah, now it's going to take 2 instant speed removal spells to deal with the Aetherling. So Jensen makes his Aetherling unblockable. Swings in. Joe's going to put his Aetherling in front of one of the soldiers.
And Joe, almost out of mana, can only do so much this turn. Starts out with, is it going to be a Hero's Downfall?
It is. Hero's Downfall on the Aetherling. Dissolve, says Huey.
And then Joe is going to try, I believe, to bounce the Aetherling. That resolves. Hero's Downfall gone. William Jensen scries, puts a card to the bottom. And then we're going to see Far from far away try to bounce the Aetherling.
Jensen deciding what to do about that. I don't believe he has any other counter spells, so he can just protect the Aetherling by exiling it, as is the usual method of protecting an Aetherling.
You see him separate his land into blue land and non-blue lands.
Yeah. All right, so he's going to say, all right, my Aetherling is exiled. Your spell doesn't resolve, but it does keep you from getting hit with that Aetherling. And
Joe down to 2.
yeah, it takes a hit from one of the soldiers. And Jensen says, all right, end my turn. At end of turn.
Wow, that was a nice play here. The at end of turn, it forces Joe to remove this after the trigger would happen. That means that Joe is not going to have the Aetherling in play during his own turn, so it stops him from being able to attack on this one important key turn.
And I think an Elspeth was to draw for the turn. Let's see. No, I'm looking at Jensen's list. Does Joe play 2 Elspeths? I think he just went. Yeah, he plays 2 Elspeths, and I think he's got both of them. Not enough. So Joe Losset falls in game 1 here to Huey Jensen in the Esper Control Mirror.
Now
down a game, but yeah, that was a grind.
That was a pretty impressive grind. I went over the sideboards and the main decks of these two players a little bit earlier, and one thing. They have very, very similar lists. William Jensen is playing the deck that is also being played by Reed Duke, but these two players are not playing the same exact list. Now, I've gone through, and what are the things that make them different after sideboard? Because they both have a ton of weapons. I mean, they both have the same number of heroes, downfalls, and detention spheres and revs, that kind of thing. What's different? Well, William Jensen has 2 Jace Memory Adept, where Joe Losset has none. And William Jensen has 2 Negates, where Joe Losset has 1. They both have a number of cards in common otherwise. Meanwhile, Joe Losset has an extra Aetherling. He can go to 2 Aetherling after board. He has an extra Elspeth, so he has 2 Elspeth total. He has an extra Thoughtseize. He has, I think, a Glare of Heresy is going to be valuable in this Detention Sphere and Elspeth war. He's got a Glare of Heresy, and importantly, he has the mother of all anti-Aetherling cards. He has Debtor's Pulpit. Now, if you don't know what Debtor's Pulpit is, that's a card that we would like to bring up. Debtor's Pulpit, white 4 enchant land. And Debtor's Pulpit is basically you have that land become an icy manipulator. It can tap a creature, so it's a reusable way to answer a Aetherling.
There you see it. It's a it's a pretty hefty cost for that effect, but the fact that you can repeatedly target an Aetherling before combat makes it so that you kind of blank the Aetherling until they deal with the Debtor's Pulpit.
Now, this card is a dedicated anti-Aetherling card.
It is.
And Joe Losset having it in his sideboard says how much he respects the effect of that card in this matchup.
So here's something, comparing them based on what they have, as far as what they have different from each other. I like the 2 additional Jace Memory, or the 2 Jace Memory Adepts that Huey has available. I think that's going to matter. Plus, he's got an additional negate. On the other side, I like that. I don't think the extra Elspeth matters as much for Joe Losset, but the additional Aetherling and additional way to deal with Aetherling is certainly going to matter. Plus, he's got an additional Thoughtseize and that Glare of Heresy that you mentioned is going to be able to take out Detention Spheres. So I feel like as far as the edge on card comparisons, Joe actually has more tools to deal with this particular matchup than Jensen. Now he just needs to draw them in the right order.
Well, yeah, and he also has to finish 2 games for Joe Losset to win this. He has to win 2 in a row, which could be pretty hard to do. It takes a while sometimes to win in these matchups, and, they have already exhausted about half of the round.
Yeah, so Joe may have a slight advantage on cards. He's at a disadvantage on time. And, that's not even taking into account the fact that William Jensen is a newly inducted Hall of Fame player. And they don't give those out just for fun. Jensen, a very accomplished player, a very, very good player. And, that's a tough battle. This is a tough opponent. Not to say that Joe's not a tough opponent. Joe is certainly a tough opponent. He's very good. He's done well repeatedly on the Open Series.
It's sort of like this. I'm a solid boxer, but then you're thinking about people that are like professional boxers that are, the all-time titans, William Jensen. He was considered a part of the group of players during the late 90s, early 2000s that was amongst the best in the world.
And he's making a case for still being considered one of the best players in the world in 2013 here.
Yeah, I know that one of the things with Huey, that's one of the nicknames that William Jensen has is Huey. It's an old nickname for him. Is that there was a thing that we used to call Murderer's Row, and that would be at Pro Tours, at U.S. Nationals when that existed. That would be all of the really, really scary opponents who were not just good, but they were the kind of people that you felt like they could get inside your head. William Jensen was considered definitely a part of that Murderer's Row quality of player. The Finkles, the Stephen O'Mahony Schwartzes, many of those players are currently in the Hall of Fame. William Jensen has been elected this year.
So interesting note about Debtor's Pulpit can also apparently answer Blood Baron because it actually grants the ability to the land, if I'm understanding correctly.
That's correct.
And that is Cameron Paul Moorer actually mentioning that on Twitter. Appreciate the chiming in there, Cameron.
Now, the existence of Blood Baron after board in the Esper Control Mirror is kind of controversial.
It is.
Many players feel like it is an excellent way to add to your threat count, and other players feel like it's not what the fight is about. And I'm curious to see which camp that these two players are in. Personally, I don't like Blood Baron in the Esper Mirror. I think it's a traditional control mirror, and even though there aren't very many answers to Blood Baron, I personally prefer going another direction. Other players have told me that they think it's a really important part. It looks like Joe might have forgotten to draw. Or no, he mulliganed. There we go.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think Joe mulled to 6 there.
Yeah, he did mulligan. I see a dissolve in Joe's hand.
Now, interesting, Joe apparently chose to be on the draw. He actually fell in game 1, but apparently chose to draw, which is something I've heard. Guillaume Wafotapa did the same thing in the Pro Tour, so maybe that's where he got that idea. But the Thoughtseize from William Jensen is going to show us Dissolve, Sphinx's Revelation, Glare of Heresy, Island, and Godless Shrine. So Joe holding a couple of counter spells. He's going to lose one to the Thoughtseize. And Huey going to play a Temple of Silence and bottom his top card.
Now, in this matchup, the play or the draw is very interesting.
And
Jensen misses a land. That is the most important thing in these control mirrors. Jensen does have a divination in hand, so right now he's going to go land divination. There we go. That's going to help.
And Losset may want to dissolve this. He's pulling it to the front here because he knows Jensen just missed a land drop, and now he found the third one but cast a draw spell. So Losset going to pounce when he has the opportunity.
I think there's a divination of his own.
And Dissolve does take out that divination, and Joe says, I'll divination myself. Finds a Sphinx's Revelation and another divination.
I really like Joe's play there. That was really good. It might not work out. Look, there it is. Jensen with the fourth land. No Jace, though.
Joe now able to both hit his land drop here. He does have a second divination, which he's going to cast here into 3 open mana on the other side of the table, but it does resolve. Draws a couple more cards. And Temple of Deceit is the land drop. He looks, he says, no, bottom.
Yeah, in this matchup, I don't think I would want to draw when it's game 1, but in game 2 and 3, when you've got all of the 2-mana counterspells, drawing makes a lot of sense to me.
So Jensen able to find his 5th land, and he is going to go ahead and use Sphinx's Revelation to try to draw 2 and hope to consistently hit his land drops for the next few turns.
Joe says okay.
He did find a couple of lands, so Jensen is set up here for at least the next 2 turns. Finds a Plains for this turn, and Losset says, you know what, I'm going to Revelation. And it looks like for 3 here. And that resolves. Finds, it looks like there's the Debtor's Pulpit.
That card is very important in this match, so I would be very surprised if he tried to push it out.
4 Gainsay in the board of each of these decks. I think there's a pair of them in Joe's hand. Godless Shrine untapped is the play from Joe.
I mean, maybe he's going to run the Pulpit out there and leave himself with 2 mana back.
Looks like he's certainly considering that play, and there is the Pulpit. targeting a basic island. Does Jensen have an answer? He does have a detention sphere, which is a nice answer, but he's going to go ahead and let it resolve for now. It has no effect on the game at this particular point, so Jensen doesn't need to worry about it just yet. But when Aetherling hits the table, that's when Jensen wants to deal with it, or just beforehand.
I think we're going to see a fight over a Jace here.
Revelation was the play at the end of Joe's turn from Jensen, and it resolved. There's that Jace Architect of Thought you mentioned. Gainsay, says Joe, and Jensen says, all right, Jace is gone.
And he lays a land and passes the turn.
3 mana up on Jensen's side.
See an Aetherling drawn by Joe Losset.
He's got Glare of Heresy, double Sphinx's Revelation, Azorius Charm, and a couple more cards, including an Aetherling, an additional Gainsay, and one other card that I can't quite get a good look at.
And Joe, end of turn, going to draw 1 card.
Cycles the Azorius Charm. I think it may have been another Gainsay. As a Dissolve was the card that I had missed. All right, Joe untaps. Draws for the turn, finds another Azorius Charm.
Both players with 8 mana in play. The control mirror is traditionally won by the player who manages to get their mana out.
So Joe's hand is Negate, Gainsay, Dissolve, Glare of Heresy, Double Revelation. Well, there's the Glare of Heresy. He decides to discard it. Aetherling and Azorius Charm. Interesting that he chooses to discard the Glare of Heresy there. He's going to go ahead and cast a Sphinx's Revelation at the end of Huey's turn after Huey just says go.
And Jensen thinking about this one. Now, Jensen had said in another place that he wasn't sure about how often he would want to counter a Sphinx's Revelation. He does it here. He saw Joe missed a land drop. And I think he wanted to hammer that down and just not let that happen.
So he does dissolve the Sphinx's Revelation. Joe draws Elspeth for the turn and passes back. Jace Memory Adept and a Gainsay in Jensen's hand. Scryland. Jensen says, I'm going to put it on the bottom. And end my turn, and there you see another Revelation and a Gainsay from Jensen. Says, all right, so is that all of the Revelations from Joe Losset?
It's possible. That was a lot of Revelations at this point.
So Temple of Silence is the play from Joe. He sees Elspeth on top and puts it on the bottom because he's already holding 1.
We see 4 cards, it looks like.
A Gainsay on a Sphinx's Revelation for the second consecutive turn. This time the cards are switched, though. Jensen tries to cast Revelation. Joe counters it.
Jensen draws his negate. He does have 2 negate as opposed to Joe's 1. I think we're trying to determine what lands are tapped.
Yeah, trying to figure something out here what to do with Gainsay. I believe 3 Sphinx's Revelation have been cast on Huey's side, and at least 3 have been cast on Joe's side, possibly 4. Jace Memory Adept is the play from Jensen here. Joe can counter it with a negate.
And we have a fight.
Negate back, and Dissolve is available for Joe if he wants to fight over it.
I don't think that land lets him.
He does not. I thought it was 2 islands, but it's Island Debtor's Pulpit. So Joe unable to dissolve the Jace, and Jace is hitting the table.
Yeah, and William Jensen uses the +1 ability, draw a card and mill the other player. Mill any player, but he chose to mill Joe in this case. This means Joe is actually on an incredibly fast clock right now. As soon as he takes Jace to the face, that's milling 10 for every 0 activation.
Yeah, I like the initial activation of Jace to draw a card. Just in case a hero's downfall is coming, you at least get something out of the Jace. Shaheen was talking about that yesterday. Wait until you're in a position to really control the game, then start using the 0 ability. But to at least draw a card when the Jace first comes into play seems like a solid plan. Elspeth is the play, and we've got a Planeswalker battle besides the one between Losset and Jensen.
And we see 3 soldiers joining the battlefield.
3 different soldiers.
It will not take very much time for the Elspeth to answer that Jace. But in the meantime, we've seen a lot of card draw happening so far. I would be unsurprised if it wouldn't take much time for Jace just to kill Joe.
Yeah,
We gotta count.
Jensen is holding at least a single detention sphere, and I think he may be holding multiple detention spheres. So he's going to be able to deal with the Elspeth. It looks like he's got one detention sphere. He's going to be able to deal with the Elspeth, and Joe has already discarded his Glare of Heresy, which is a card that would deal with the detention spheres. Aetherling, though, is the play from Jensen. And the count, apparently, 32 cards in Losset's library.
Now down to 22.
Yeah, after Jace activated for 0. And Jensen now fighting on 2 axes here. He's going to attack the library. He's going to attack the life total.
21 cards.
Now, Debtor's Pulpit is going to have some effect on this particular plan of Aetherling, as we mentioned. So before Jensen is... before Jensen's turn ends, Debtor's Pulpit taps the Aetherling, and Joe attacks into Jace with the 3 soldiers so that the Aetherling is not available to block.
Another 6 mana. Is he going to cast an Aetherling of his own?
Looks like that's the case. Aetherling comes down for Joe. It resolves. Elspeth ticks up to 6. 3 more dudes.
Pass it back.
As I mentioned, Jensen has at least 1 detention sphere. Looks like just 1. He can take out Elspeth. He can take out the Debtor's Pulpit. See what he actually goes with. He does have, looks like, his 4th copy of Sphinx's Revelation in hand, if I saw correctly. Yeah, there's 3 in the graveyard, and I'm pretty sure he's got 1 in hand alongside a Watery Grave and that 1 detention sphere. All right. Pre-combat, Joe says use Debtor's Pulpit to tap your Aetherling.
William Jensen.
He's going to count again just to be clear.
21 should be the count unless something's changed.
21 is confirmed. So you can detention sphere a soldier, which will remove the rest of the soldiers. That protects the Jace.
Well, there's still the Aetherling in play to contend with then.
Yeah, that's right. He doesn't have an answer to the Aetherling in hand. So he's actually going to lose the Jace if he doesn't cast Sphinx's Revelation here. So that's what he's going to do.
Starts out with the Sphinx's Revelation for it looks like 7 cards. Does that work?
Revelation with some mana up.
Oh, wow.
And dissolve. Joe says, all right, you've got mana up, but show me the counter spell. And dissolve happens. Joe's going to go ahead and scry a land to the bottom off of that dissolve, but he successfully counters that Revelation, and it looks like Joe's Aetherling is going to stick around and do some damage next turn, likely taking out that Jace and protecting Joe's library.
And William Jensen here, +1. Oh, maybe not.
I think Joe says, didn't you already? Was that this turn?
No. There we go. It's 10 +1s.
Yeah, because it was 32 down to 22. Joe drew. That was why it was 21. So.
Yep. Detention Sphere on Aetherlings.
Yeah,
Goodbye, Aetherlings.
With Joe being tapped out, Jensen finds a way to deal with Aetherling, but he has to remove his own in order to do it.
And we see Jace die. Joe at 19 cards left in his library.
And 19 life, too. Elspeth ticks up 3 more soldiers. And, yeah, we're going to have to... yeah, there's 3 soldiers. If we get some more soldier tokens, we can properly represent that. The judge is on it, says our director.
Elspeth of his own. That is, I don't believe, going to be sufficient. William Jensen passes the turn. I think he's just looking for more information, see what kind of player Joe is. Is Joe the kind of guy who goes for it? Is he the kind of guy who waits around a turn?
Yeah, he can actually get an Elspeth emblem here, or he can make 3 guys and risk losing the Elspeth. But yeah, you know, I think you just make an emblem and you swing.
Joe disagrees.
Yeah, he
And
does.
William lives another turn. 3 more soldiers. And William
Scoops him up. He draws negate off the top. Not going to deal with what's on board. And Joe Losset evens things up against Huey Jensen here with just over 12 minutes left in the round. Round 14 of 16. This is our one of our final rounds of the Swiss. We've just got a couple more after this here in Indianapolis for the StarCityGames.com Open Series featuring the Invitational. This has been an exciting match already. I love this. I love the fact that we've already seen another match earlier on, and we get to see pretty much the entire match here between these two. Now, what we don't want to have happen is a draw here. We'd like to see one of these guys walk away with a win, but a draw at this point may not hurt as much as it would have earlier.
That's absolutely true. Now, one of the things, thinking about this, that first game took these two players about 28 minutes. This game took about 15 minutes, and there's even less time to finish this last game.
Well, they're already past sideboarding, and they're both shuffling, so that bodes well for them to have a little bit more time. If they can keep up the pace, I think they'll be able to close this one out one way or the other.
Now, we saw there that William Jensen stumbled on mana, and then that was on turn 3. He failed to drop a third land. Then on the draw of that third land, cast a divination right away, and Joe Losset, using one of his only counter spells that he had in his hand, I believe he had one dissolved Thought Seized, and then he had the other dissolve. He used it up to get rid of that divination. And then I think what basically felt like it happened to me is that he stayed ahead most of the game, and at a certain point, after they both had shot up tons of card draw, Joe landed a threat. It was answered. William Jensen dropped a Jace, but then was tapped down far enough that an Elspeth was able to take over the game for Joe Losset. Yeah. No counter magic left for William Jensen to fight.
Right. And being able to deal with the Aetherlings was key for Jensen, but it was just not enough to protect his own life total. He could not deal with the Elspeth.
Joe Losset had Debtor's Pulpit out, and there were 3 turns that Aetherling was on William Jensen's side of the table that would have been sufficient to kill Joe if it wasn't for that Debtor's Pulpit.
Yeah, you can see the power of the Pulpit versus Aetherling, but, you know, it's just a one-of. But in a deck like Esper Control, you're going to see so many cards, and it looks like we're underway. We've got both players leading on a Temple of Deceit.
William Jensen electing to play in this matchup.
Yeah, so both players having slightly different opinions. You can see in Joe's hand is a Debtor's Pulpit, that lone Debtor's Pulpit, and we see a cycled Azorius Charm at the end of Jensen's turn for Joe Losset, and he finds his third land drop. It is a Temple of Silence. Looks like he's thinking about it.
Trying to decide if he wants to keep it or not. Yeah. I don't know. Does he out of land in his hand?
It appears to be the case that he's out of land, so I'm guessing that was a spell he wanted, but feels like he needs the land. Land is more important. He does find a Watery Grave on top for the turn, so he does not miss a land drop.
And he has a divination in hand, but he passes the turn. He doesn't want to leave himself exposed to a potential Jace of either variety, the 4 or 5 mana Jaces.
Godless Shrine is the play off the top, and he did actually have a second Watery Grave, so Joe was not out of lands, as we may have suspected. So both players with just land go, and there we have a Sphinx's Revelation for just a couple for Jensen at the end of Joe's turn.
And Jensen has a Thoughtseize, casts it.
All right, are we going to see a negate here? It looks like that's what Joe's going to go with. Negate your Thoughtseize.
Is he going to see an attempt at something like, nope. No attempt, another Temple, pass the turn back, 3 mana up for William Jensen. Joe Losset draws, looks like he drew an Elspeth.
He did. What do you think of this Elspeth? Second best of the 3?
I'm not quite sure, I like all of them.
I do like all of them. Divination is the play from Joe. It resolves, he gets a Hero's Downfall and a Hallowed Fountain off of the Divination, plays the Fountain tapped and passes back. This is classic Control, kind of land go or land card draw go. It's pretty much the way it's going to play out, at least for these early turns, and now we're getting kind of deep into the game where the players can start trying to stick more threatening cards while leaving up counter magic.
The first move here, it's a Jace.
Jace, Architect of Thought, the most recently printed Jace.
It resolves. And Jensen's like, hang on a second. Nope, it resolves.
Joe says, I'm going to tick it up, which is unconventional, I think, in the control mirror. Not unheard of, but I kind of like getting cards off my Jace. Sphinx's Revelation is the play at the end of Joe's turn for Huey, and it resolves, netting Jensen 4 cards. There, draws a Watery Grave off the top. Jensen has a full grip, more than full. It's an Everflowing Chalice. Wait, no. Overflowing. So it looks like a couple of... Yeah, Jensen's grip is so full that we can only see a sliver of each card, but I believe I see a Detention Sphere, an Elspeth, something that looks like Supreme Verdict, but may actually just be a Temple. He's got a Dissolve in there.
Lays an island, cast Elspeth, 2 mana open. Joe Losset, 2 mana up.
Yeah,
he does not have very many answers to this card. Only one
that
negate.
one negate, which he's already used. Gainsay does not do it, so Elspeth is going to resolve. She brings along 3 dudes. Now Jace has a nice way of dealing with those soldiers, so Joe is fairly safe at the moment. And he's going to have to find a way to deal with this Elspeth. He can go ahead and use that Hero's Downfall sitting in his hand. That'll deal with the Elspeth. He's also got an Aetherling, an Elspeth of his own, a Far Away. He's going to go ahead and get some more cards off the Jace. And one of them is Aetherling, one of them is Sphinx's Revelation, and the third card being Temple of Deceit. Jensen decides to split the Aetherling away from the other 2, and Joe says, all right, I'll bottom the Aetherling. I'll take the Revelation and the land.
Now, meanwhile, the clock ticks down. Just over 7 minutes remain in this match.
A lot of decisions to be made here for Joe if he wants to try to take this match. He's going to go ahead and cast an Elspeth of his own.
Does the negate live in William Jensen's hand? No. It's dueling Elspeths.
Temple of Deceit, the follow-up play. Joe's going to scry something else there to the bottom. And 3 soldiers for Joe off of Elspeth. And we've got identical boards with Joe with the Jace advantage. Jace on 3 counters. So he can protect his Jace with those soldiers. He can protect his Elspeth with those soldiers.
It looks like Jensen has a Jace.
Yeah, we're gonna have matching board states here. But Hero's Downfall will take out Joe's copy of Elspeth. And now Jensen attacking with the soldiers. I believe he's attacking Joe.
I think he's attacking the Jace there.
Yeah, either way.
All the soldiers die.
Yeah, soldiers trade away, but Jensen's surviving Elspeth is going to make 3 more.
Hero's Downfall in William Jensen's hand. 1, 2, 3, 4 mana. He casts a Jace instead. Does the minus on that Jace. What you got? Pithing Needle. That is a one of in William Jensen's sideboard. One of the ways to change things around. You know, if you are behind on either your Elspeths, your Jaces, or your Aetherlings, you can use it to try to, stop that advantage. Sure, it'll hurt your own copies as well, but you know what? If there's an Aetherling in play and you can't answer it, better a Pithing Needle than nothing.
And the split is Needle, Land, or Gainsay, and Jensen goes with the Gainsay. All right, Joe untaps, draws Sphinx's Revelation. He's got a couple of those in hand alongside an Aetherling, a Hero's Downfall, a Far Away, a Debtor's Pulpit. In fact, he may have a backup Jace in there. First, he's going to plus his Jace. All right, what's next on the agenda? He's going to go ahead and Hero's Downfall Jensen's Elspeth. Not a blue card, can't be hit by Gainsay. And Elspeth goes down, and now we've just got dueling Jaces on board, although Jensen has a couple of soldiers, 3 in fact, to kind of trump
And
Joe's board state.
He passes because he knows Joe has already plus the Elspeth. The Jace. So the Jace will effectively turn off the soldiers, making them O1s when they attack.
Revelation from Losset.
4.5 minutes remaining. These players playing very frantically, trying to get this as a victory for someone.
Jace ticks up to 5 on Losset's side of the board. He's got plenty of cards in hand. Those soldiers are effectively neutered right now by the Jace, and so not anything Joe needs to necessarily deal with. He's going to go ahead and cast that Debtor's Pulpit at this point, even though there's no Aetherling in sight. Jensen's going to respond with a Hero's Downfall on Joe's Jace. And Joe now has to determine, does he want to allow that Hero's Downfall to kill his Jace? He's got to Dissolve. He keeps tapping 2, but Gainsay is not going to do it. Dissolve will take out the Hero's Downfall, and looks like a Dissolve right back from Jensen will make sure that Jace leaves the table. So Joe, with his only non-land permanent being the Debtor's Pulpit that actually did resolve on a Plains.
Oh my goodness. The Jace reveals the Jace Memory Adept. He splits that away from the Jace Architect of Thought and a land. William Jensen immediately slams the Memory Adept and replaces the old Jace with the new Jace.
And
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 cards get milled.
Yeah, so on the attack, Jensen attacking with all 3 soldiers as well.
That Sphinx's Revelation a bit more dangerous when you've got a Jace Memory Adept in play against you.
At the same time, he needs to find he needs an answer for it, and he may have to Revelate to do it. So Aetherling is the play from Joe.
Gainsay,
says Jensen, and Gainsay back, says Joe. And Gainsay back. It's Gainsays all over the place. And it looks like Aetherling is successfully countered. So Jensen, with all the counter spells, able to take out Joe's attempt to muster an offense. Now 3 soldiers come in for actual damage. Joe falls to 17. We're going to do a count here. 14 cards left in Joe's library. That is a scary place to be. Facing down Jace Memory Adept.
all these angles that Joe Losset's being attacked at once, and time is running out.
He has found a second copy of Jace, or an additional copy of Jace, which can neuter the... Oh, and he found a Hero's Downfall. So Hero's Downfall on Jace, Memory Adept, and Dissolve gets gainsayed, Gainsay gets gainsayed, and wow.
Any hand?
Yeah.
Oh, that's the hand, and that is the match. William Jensen puts out a sigh of relief.
Oh my gosh!
Wow, you can see the judge behind Joe there, like, wow, that was a good
my
match.
reaction too. Wow. I mean, Jensen, did he have 4 gainsays right there? I'm pretty sure it was all 4, right? Because he gainsayed twice on the earlier turn, and then gainsayed twice again. Oh my gosh!